Okay, everybody, welcome back for some more kite surfing. Right, so I was telling you about my first times, the experience of kite surfing and the risks of going into the power zone. But what I want to do now is to try and give you a real feeling of what it feels like to have this amazing, huge kite above your head, okay? And I'm going to use two metaphors to do this. The first metaphor is a car traveling down a motorway at 100 kilometers per hour, and that is to give you the feeling of what it's like to feel nervous with this thing above your head. And the second metaphor is a horse or a monster or a beast that is trying to run away at any moment, and you don't know when this horse is going to run. It could just disappear and drag you with it, okay? So let's start with the car going at 100 kilometers an hour. So when you're driving down the motorway very, very fast, but in a dead straight line, it's quite easy, right? You don't have to actually, as long as you have no risks around you, there are no hazards, objects that can get in the way, then you just keep going in a straight line. But you have to be careful. You have to keep your eyes open. You have to steer maybe just a tiny bit. You have to make sure that the car doesn't drift off to one side or the other. And so that is what it is like at all moments when you are in control of a kite. So you have to lift the kite up off the ground, which is already a risky procedure, getting it into the air. Then when it's above you, it's as if you're already going 100 kilometers an hour on a motorway in a car. So if I can just stand there and I've got the control bar in my hand, and if I do nothing, I just have to move the control bar a little bit just to make sure it's not going to go off to one side or the other. But you know, I'm going in a straight line basically, very fast, but I'm going in a straight line. And I just have to be very, very careful at all times. So even when I'm just standing still chatting to somebody next to me over here, I have to be really careful that the kite doesn't drop slightly to one side, because then it could catch a bit of wind and it could whip me away, or it could catch onto another kite or something else. So you can't just, when you have a kite above you, you can't become distracted. You have to be focused even when you're doing nothing, okay? Then imagine the difficulty. Imagine you're driving on the motorway 100 kilometers an hour. If you want to change to the next lane, then it's quite easy as well. You just have to turn the steering wheel just a little bit, and the car will slowly move over to the other side, and then you steer back again, and you're safe again, and you're just going in a straight line. And then maybe there's a slight bend in the motorway, you go around this way. It's not difficult doing that kind of driving, right? But it is high risk at all moments. You don't want to have a crash, so you've got to be aware. Okay, so then imagine having to have that very high level of awareness and that high sense of risk that if you lose control, if you turn your steering wheel too abruptly, then you're going to crash. If you're going 100 kilometers an hour and you suddenly go like this, you're going to crash and you can die, right? So imagine having that feeling, but at the same time you're walking into the water, you've got waves hitting you, you've got other people around you, you don't know if they're good kite surfers or not, and you're carrying a board in the other hand, and then you have to sit down in the water, get your feet into the board, and then you have to do a sudden maneuver to get everything up and gliding across the water. That is how scary it is, or at least that's my sensation of how scary it is, because I just felt all the time a big accident is about to happen. I'm controlling this giant monster above my head. As I said, the kite would barely fit into this room inflated, so it's very big, and it flies 25 meters above your head. So it's like looking up at a tower and being in control of that tower. Actually, when I think of what it feels like, it's kind of like the feeling of vertigo, like when you're scared of heights, right? When you're scared of heights, you're looking down, you're scared of falling. But this is the same feeling, but imagine having that feeling looking upwards. And so looking up into the sky thinking, I am controlling that giant thing, and it could whisk me away at any moment. Okay, So now the second metaphor, which is that of a very strong horse, or maybe a rhinoceros, or something like that. So as I was saying, as long as the kite is directly above your head, it's peaceful. It's not going to do much. As long as you keep it there, it's going to be okay. And so it's like the horse is sitting down. I've got the horse on a leash, and I don't want the horse to run away. But if the horse moves a bit over to one side, then all of a sudden it's like, if the kite moves slightly to one side, it's as if the horse suddenly stands up, and with all its strength it starts running. And then if the horse drops into the power zone, it's like the horse suddenly starts galloping at the fastest speed it can possibly go. And so that is the feeling you have when you fall off while you're kite surfing. So it's like you can be going along calmly on your board, and you just lose control, or you get distracted, maybe there's a sudden gust of wind or something, and suddenly your kite drops very quickly into the power zone. What is the immediate reaction of any human being when you're learning how to power kite? Well, if you want to control something, as human beings, we all want to grab it and bring it towards us to control it, right? And that is the worst thing you can possibly do, because that is the gesture which brings the kite into the power zone. So I did this so many times, and what ends up happening, so I'm going along at a moderate speed, and then all of a sudden my body is flung forward, and I'm skimming across the top of the wave there, and there's no way of stopping this monster. The horse is dragging me at the same speed of the wind. If the wind is blowing at 30 kilometers an hour, my body is flying across the surface of the water at 30 kilometers an hour. And you don't know how long it's going to last. It may last 2 seconds, or it may go on for longer. Luckily, the kites are designed so that they will fall out of the sky, but you just have this instinct that you have to grab it and control it. And so I'm trying to control it, skimming along the surface of the water, and it's incredibly exhilarating, but one of the most frightening experiences I've ever had. And so that's why when you're a beginner, you have to try and be on an empty sea with absolutely no obstacles, so that there are very few risks. Okay, so I hope I've given you a sense of what it feels like to go kite surfing, and I can tell you about a few of the other difficulties that I faced. So one initial problem, one of the main difficulties for me personally, difficulty number one was the fear, that fear of having to control the beast that you have. And then the second problem was language. As an interpreter, language was my main issue, because I was taking these classes in Rome, and I have lived there for 6 years, so I speak good Italian, but it's still my fourth language. And so having to understand commands very quickly, and from somebody who is shouting and screaming at you, is not easy. Above all when you're already nervous, And add on top of that the fact that the instructors in this area, all of them spoke absolutely zero English. I mean, that's okay, I can put up with that, but they speak Romanaccio, which is Roman dialect, So that means that they don't finish the verbs. So, for example, mangiare means to eat, but in Roman dialect, that's mangià. And so I have to, it's understandable. I do understand Roman dialect, but it's just this added, on top of all the fear and all these difficulties, I was having to understand this guy screaming at me in Roman dialect. And so also I found that my instructor's personality and mine didn't really match very well. He's very let's say, he doesn't show much British calm. He's very Italian and high passion, and so we would often argue while out on the water, because in order, I felt that he was like shouting at me all the time, and I thought I was like saying, "Give me a break, give me time, patience. Let's calm down. You don't need to tell me every single mistake. I just need time to process it. I need time to understand what you're saying." And he didn't really show much patience, I have to say. But then we became, over time, over like 7 days together every day, we became friends. And it was like during the lessons we were not friends, but then afterwards he would always say, "The rule is that you have to buy your teacher a beer after every session, otherwise the following day will not go well." And he said, it's scaramanzia, I think it is in Italian, which is like a curse, kind of. You're cursed if you don't buy your instructor a beer. And so on the first day I did, and then the second day went well. But then that second day I had to leave early, and I didn't have time. I said, "Sorry, I don't have time to buy you a beer, I've got to rush." And then he's like, "Oh, watch out for the curse." And indeed, the following day was absolutely terrible. I crashed so many times. I ended up being dragged through the water on endless occasions, and maybe he did it on purpose, I don't know. No, I don't think so. No, but anyway, this guy is an excellent person. He introduced me to his family, and then he said, "Let's go camping on the beach." We had a bonfire and a barbecue on the beach, and then went kite surfing the following day. And then he started making, he made an Instagram story just to show everybody that he's like teaching. He'd never taught a foreigner before. He'd only taught Italians, and so he just wanted to show his friends that he was teaching a foreigner. And the story on Instagram became so popular that he decided the following day, "Oh, I'll make another one, and we'll come up with a different idea this time." And then each day he came up with a different story for Instagram. And then people started to come up to me on the beach, and they were like, "I know you from Instagram." And so now I've become well known in the little community of that area of the Roman coastline. And much more I could say, but yes, the main motto of this is, if you go kite surfing, don't pull the bar. Don't try to. You have to reject your human instinct, your reflexes. You have to. So there are a number of risks when kite surfing. You can, as I said, it's unlikely that you're really going to fly up into the air, but you can be, when you kite surf, you go out maybe 50 meters out to sea, and then you come back again. So the idea is you do lines like this, you go backwards and forwards, and when you're out 50 meters in the depths of the sea, you may have a problem there, and so you have to know how to self-rescue, as it's called. You may, the kite may fall out of the sky, and the lines can get tangled. You may have a problem with your harness, and hopefully there's another kite surfer out there who can help you, but if that's not the case, you have to cut yourself free. You have to carry a knife with you to cut yourself free so that you can swim back to shore. Or there is also a self-rescue method where you use the kite in the water as you use the wind to push you back. You're sitting on the kite, but that's a very difficult thing to achieve. So there are many other risks. You can crash into another kite surfer. You may have obstacles. There might be rocks around in the water somewhere. So you have to be very careful. You have to also learn a lot. This is the steepest learning curve that I have had, maybe for anything. I don't know. Maybe learning a language is a very fast learning process as well. But I felt that with this, I was learning in so many different areas, so many fields of activities, because you have to learn science, you have to learn about the winds, you have to learn names of equipment, and I was learning the lessons in Italian, of course, but then I would go home and try to look things up on YouTube so that I could revise and understand things better, and that most of the information is in English online, and so I had to then make big glossaries of like all of the the wind terms, the terms for the equipment, and so it was kind of like making a glossary for interpreting. So, in conclusion, kite surfing is a great sport, and I would really recommend you to get involved if possible. There's great solidarity. I remember Jose telling me that one of the things he really likes about surfing is that there's a real community. You're there on the beach with people. Maybe I'm taking ideas from, stealing from Jose's speech, but I remember you saying that when you're at sea, someone could be a very wealthy banker, or they could be very poor, and you don't know the difference. All you know is that they have a surfboard, and so it means that you share so much with people from so many different walks of life, and because you face the same problems together, you create a community and great solidarity very quickly. I think that this experience was the best Italian lesson I have ever had. I learned much more Italian than in a shorter time than when I studied Italian at university. I learned a lot of self-control. I learned about my own fears. I learned how to control my emotions. I also spent time on beautiful beaches, met wonderful people, and I had very exhilarating and exciting moments. So now I hand the baton over to Jose. The challenge is for you to listen to Jose's speech and to see which of these two sports, which have a lot in common but which are so very different, and see which of them you may prefer. Thank you.
Oh wow. Oh, so many ways to die.
Yeah. When you see them, you just think, go, it looks kind of.
Isn't it terrifying?
Sharks either.
Yeah.
Sharks.
Oh yeah. Well,
No,
Jenny she was stung by a jellyfish doing kite surfing. Yeah.
In Tarifa you would see hundreds of people, so